Hey guys, so it's Mrs. Hannon this week. I could not find a good video for what I wanted to teach. I realized that the way that I do it in my classroom makes way more sense than anything I could see online. So I'm here this week. I'm going to teach you guys about negative exponents. If you have a blank piece of paper in your house and a pencil, that would be great. If you could follow along with me and take some notes, it will help you understand everything a little bit better. So to start here, I just want to investigate what happens when we have negative exponents, okay? So let's actually give ourselves an example that gives us a negative exponent. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do x squared over x to the fifth. Okay, so as you guys know, when we have two powers like this that are dividing, what do we do with our exponents? And you know that we subtract them. So this would be 2 minus 5, or negative 3. Okay, so this is what we're investigating today. What does this mean when we have a negative? So the way we're going to actually figure this out is we're going to do this problem a different way, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take this problem, and I'm actually going to expand out the x's. So on the top, I have x squared, and that means I have x times x. On the bottom, I have x to the fifth. That means I have x times x times x times x times x, exactly 5 of them. All right, now we're going to cancel. So here I can cancel 1x here. Here I can cancel 1x here. Okay, so what do I have? On the top, there's nothing left. So when everything cancels, we put a 1. On the bottom, I have how many x's left? 3. So this gives me x to the third. Okay, cool. So now let's look at what we got before and what we have now. This is our clue of what happens when we have a negative exponent. And it actually gets flipped to the bottom. Now, let me explain this another way to help it make even more sense to you. When you have an exponent, you are multiplying the number 5, however many times the exponent says, 3 times, right? Okay, when you have a negative exponent, in math, negative means opposite, okay? So, for instance, when we have a negative number, instead of going up, we go down, right? If I did 5 plus negative 3, instead of going up to 8, I would go down to 2. So a negative in math actually means we do the opposite. Okay, so now let's think about this. Negative 3. If a positive 3 was multiplying 5 3 times, then a negative 3 is dividing 5 3 times. And obviously, we don't have anything on the top. It's a 1. 1 is our placeholder for multiplication. Okay? All right, so let's look at some examples, and I'll show you guys how we're going to do this, how this works. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so let's try some examples using this new idea that we have. Okay, so let's think about if we had 2 to the negative 3. Okay, so this would be, since it's a negative, it goes to the bottom and it becomes positive 3, a 1 on the top. So this one, since 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, would be 1/8. All right, let's think about if I had a to the fifth times a to the negative 13th. Let's just try this one. So first let's think, what's the rule here when we have these two multiplying? What's the rule? So the rule is when we have our bases multiplying, our exponents add. Okay, so we are adding those first. But 5 plus negative 13 is negative 8. And then what did we just learn? When you have a negative, it goes on the bottom, becomes positive, and then a placeholder on the top if you have nothing else. All right, let's try another one. How about b to the 6th over b to the 7th. Okay, so on this one, our bases are dividing, our exponents need to subtract. You always subtract the top minus the bottom. So 6 minus 7, that's negative 1. When you have a negative, it flips to the bottom, becomes positive. You don't actually need the 1 on the bottom, but you can write it. It's not wrong. All right, let's think of a little bit more of a complicated problem. So let's do, how about x to the 3rd, y to the 4th, over x to the 5th, y, just y. Okay, let's try this one. So on this one, we have 2 letters, x and y. So remember, when you have 2 letters, you just do each one at a time. So let's start with the x's. We have x, and we're going to subtract. So we're going to do 3 minus 5. And then we're going to do our y's. Again, we're going to subtract 4 minus, there's no exponent on this. Does anybody remember what it is? If there's nothing there, it's an invisible 1. Okay, so now let's see what we got. X, 3 minus 5, negative 2. Y, 4 minus 1, 3. Okay, so this is a little bit interesting. Notice we have 2 letters, x and y. One exponent is negative, one exponent is positive. Okay, whenever you have a negative exponent, you're going to go ahead and give yourself a fraction bar. On this one, the one with the negative exponent is going to go ahead and go on the bottom. Remember, when it goes to the bottom, the exponent becomes positive. The one with the positive exponent is actually going to stay on the top. Okay? So that's how that one works. All right, let's try another one that's a little bit more complicated like that one. All right, how about 3, I don't want to use x again. How about 3m to the 2nd times 5m to the negative 5th. All right, so when you have this type of problem, first thing you want to do, let's actually just multiply our coefficients, right? They're not exponents, they're coefficients. So they just multiply like normal. So 3 times 5 is 15. Now let's think about our exponents here. Our bases are multiplying, so we need to do what with our exponents? Add, right? So 2 plus negative 5. All right, so 15m to the 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. Okay, remember, whenever you have a negative exponent, you need a fraction bar for your final answer. Here's why this one's a little bit tricky. This 15 and this m to the negative 3, they're different. They're separate, okay? So what is going to flip onto the bottom? Just the m, and the 3 becomes positive. So what happens with the 15? It goes on the top. Okay, so this is what I was saying earlier. The only time you put a 1 on the top is when you have nothing else, like on this one. The 8 to the 8 went to the bottom. There was nothing else there. The 1 goes on the top as a placeholder, okay? If you have 2 things, that's when you put the thing without the negative exponent on the top, okay? Or like on this one, that goes on the top because it's the positive. Has an invisible exponent of positive 1, so that goes on the top. All right, let's try one more, and then you guys are going to be good to go with trying your forms assignment. Okay, I'm going to give you a super, super tricky one. So, how about p to the negative 2 over p to the negative 1. Okay. This one's super tricky. Here's why. What happens when we divide? What happens to our exponents? They subtract. Both of these are negative. So you have 2 negatives subtracting. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care how smart you are, how good you are at math, 90% of students will get this wrong when they try to do it in their head. Okay, so here's my advice to you. When you have negatives and you know that they need to be subtracting because of the division, write it out, okay? Takes 2 seconds, guarantees you get the answer right instead of wrong. All right, so let's write out our subtraction. We have the top, -2, minus the bottom, -1. Do you guys notice I wrote the minus and I wrote the -1? How many people just write one negative there? A lot. Because they think, oh, but it's already negative, so I'm minusing it, it's fine. No, you need both, okay? All right, let's rewrite this. What happens when we have a double negative here? It becomes a plus. Okay? All right, so -2 plus 1, that would be -1. Remember, whenever you have a negative, fraction bar for your final answer. The thing with the negative goes on the bottom, becomes a positive. If there's nothing else, 1 goes on the top. So I could just do 1 over p. Okay? So next year, 8th grade, this stuff will show up on the state test, and they will be putting trickier ones like this on there. Okay? So remember my advice? Write it out. You will not regret it. If you try to do it in your head, it will probably turn out wrong, and it's not because you're not intelligent. It's just because that's a really hard thing to do in your head when you're not seeing it written out. All right, guys, try your forms, and I will be talking to you soon. If you need any help, please email me. A lot of you have my phone number. I emailed it to you in the beginning of this whole thing. Text me, FaceTime me, and I will hook you up with some help. All right, bye. Miss you guys.